I know that you were having some challenges with domain spoofing, email domain spoofing, and that was a challenge that you threw out to us to say, hey, let's see where we can sort of try and solve that problem. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your role and that challenge that you faced at Pan Golden?
Yeah. So I'm the head of Group IT. We operate primarily with 8 core countries that we're in. Overall, it's a user base of 2,500 people, both staff and our agents. But we're the best of both worlds in the fact that we're a corporate, but we're family run. So very entrepreneurial, but a fairly relatively large user base. And of that user base, a fair amount are franchise businesses. So out of Africa or through Africa, the business is franchised. Mauritius is the only one that's branch owned. And then even in South Africa, 2/3 of the offices that you'll see are all franchised. Only 1/3 are branch owned. So everything that's outside of our data center, only 1/3 of it I'm directly responsible for. 2/3 of it is up to each individual business to run as they see fit, ideally conforming to our recommended spec, but we can't enforce things. So, endpoint protection, even those things, all we can do is put down recommendations. We can only enforce that in 1/3 of our business. So my focus is really the core network, the core data center run services or cloud hosted services that everybody makes use of, and seeing how we can benefit that. And the security side goes 2 ways. One is trying to protect the business from a brand and reputation perspective, as well as actually protect our customer. So in the property industry, there's a big targeted drive at the moment from some fairly sophisticated syndicates who are actively going after almost every aspect of the property transaction, because they know that there are a lot of old agents, a lot of small mom and pops conveyancers, if not those, and even older people who aren't cyber aware. So it's easy to send an email, change the spelling of something, and you think you've got an email from the right person. They don't pay attention. The second email that came in is the one with the banking details. They respond to that. Next thing, 500,000 Rand has been paid as a deposit into the wrong account. So that's prevalent throughout the industry. So my big goal has been to try and secure our mail infrastructure as much as possible and in every way we can. And the challenge being that due to how the industry is structured, sensitive data is sent on email. It's either on WhatsApp, but traditionally when it's coming back centrally, it's mail. IDs, banking details, all of that's there. So that's where the challenge is to make sure that we've got as much security as we can in place. And to your point, something like DMARC, so I've been head of IT for 4 years now. 4 years ago, you asked me what DMARC was, no clue actually. But it's now become something that, from a legal compliance perspective, we have to have in place. SPF, then it was Deacon, fine, understood. Then DMARC was this gray area. Now, the first question that happens if there's a compromised mailbox, oh, you don't have DMARC in place, so therefore the issue is on your side. You must have been compromised. Whereas at least now, in a response to a fraud investigation, we've got the basics in place, and it starts to become a more collaborative conversation, not just a finger-pointing exercise because we don't have DMARC. So that's where we came from.
What was sort of that catalyst moment that made you and the business realize that you had to take action and go out there and look at solutions? Can you maybe share a bit about? I know it might have been a couple of events built up, but what kind of tipped you over to say, hey, we need to make an investment here and take action?
So I think I've been banging on since I took over running the department. I've been banging on about we've got to get business critical services out of email. We need to secure services. We need to try and use portals. But due to that branch franchise split, the franchises would just say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to carry on doing our own thing. Franchises then where we end up with the biggest set of compromises because they're not paying attention. They don't realize that they've been compromised, and it's only once the transaction goes through, suddenly then we find out that we've got a compromised mailbox. We retrospectively try and correct that, but our brand reputation is now at risk. And we had a couple of attorneys who kept pointing fingers and saying, actually, Pam Golding's involved in these transactions. Interesting, we're picking up consistently that you're the cause. A lot of the cases we weren't the cause, we were involved. But they're basically going after and trying to identify user mailboxes, compromise those mailboxes, and then just monitor email. So it's a different approach. They're not necessarily actually trying to send out email on our behalf, but they're trying to get access to our mailboxes.
That's right. And your experience with Mimecast in this process of Grove helping?
So maybe some background to this. Chad mentioned we've had a long-term partnership with Grove, many years, trying to implement a good couple of solutions, trying to get the board to understand the need for security and the need for additional spend, and the fact that as things change, we actually need to implement another product. So we were chatting earlier, and we've implemented 2 mail security products, 2 other security products. Why do we need the third? Why do we need Mimecast? Does that replace something else that we have? No, it's on top of it. but the cost of Mimecast is the cost of our mail infrastructure. Yes, as it should be, because it's this specific tiered product. It is the go-to standard. So that conversation has been many years in the making.
You've been trying
Sure.
hard.
So we've gotten a few things across the board. Grove happily implemented a full Google Workspace. It's now called. I've lost track. They might have renamed it since we last chatted. So we implemented that in Mauritius. Our full Mauritian business is running in Workspaces, and we were trying to get to. I've been trying to get the full Mimecast, ideally the S2 solution, in place for a while, and we keep hitting a stumbling block of spend, and the board's got some other initiatives on board, so we never quite get there, but managed to get DMOC across the line as an entry into it. We're in the Mimecast environment. We've got that partnership. We've got Grove on board, so we've got two strong security partners who can then we can add services on. So we don't like to, as a business, really have too many partners involved, and we prefer to have long-term engagement and partnerships. So once we find a vendor specifically like Mimecast, where there are tiered products that can fulfill all of the needs, and we can tack them on top of our existing products, that was a real value add. So it was kind of the foot in the door, and knowing that we can form that partnership, we can integrate the solutions and add to it as our needs grow.
Yeah, brilliant. Because I mean, it's not very often that I have been involved in a project where a customer's taken DMARC first. I must be honest in terms of the Mimecast suite. So it's brilliant that you've made that investment, and now you can land and expand effectively in terms of other capabilities.
One of the other reasons that drove DMARC as the first reason to implement was we've got a relatively small IT team. It's myself, two other managers, a service desk of 4 people, and that's the sort of support side. Our network and infrastructure is outsourced to a third-party vendor. Our desktop support's outsourced. So as a core team, IT is relatively small. We don't have the time to have a single person dedicated to reviewing mail logs, to reviewing security logs, to looking at our central consoles. So we needed a product that doesn't require weeks of training. We needed a really easy to use product, and that's where Mimecast really showed value. Was a beautifully technical, detailed product, such a simple and easy to use user interface that I can put somebody from our senior management team in front of it and guarantee you they can figure out whether we've got issues or not. And one of the other great advantages of the DMARC solution is it actually provided more than just security. We got insights into mail delivery volumes by servers that we didn't know we had anymore, that was sitting in somebody's SPF record that we thought had been removed. All of those things came to the front, and we went, why are we delivering 100 mails through X server that we've never heard of? So we were able to clean up SPF, old legacy SPF records, and even from a mail delivery, from a marketing perspective, one of our biggest challenges is we're a marketing company ultimately. And our franchises go off and sign up to third-party services that we're not aware of, and they think are working. And turns out because they weren't implementing SPF, they didn't have DCOM in place, their mails weren't even being delivered. We were able to identify that and then actually correct it. So that's been another business add in terms of value from a security product that's actually given us benefits in a marketing space.
What last piece of advice would you give to the community here in terms of DMARC and implementing that?
Sure. Well, from my perspective, don't give up. Keep at the board. Explain all the possibilities. And actually, and what I did was, a good thing was give them the full stack. Here's everything we should be spending. Here's S2. Here's the archiving product. We should have all of this. But if we just start with DMARC, it's the smaller cost, and that actually got it across the board. So that being said, we are looking at adding on those products, both weighing up the archiving from an auditing and a risk and a compliance perspective, as well as the full S2 solution. That's where I want to be. And I've also used it to say, look at competitor products, if we move to a Google or an Office 365, this would be the cost, but we would still implement Mimecast on top of that. And that's sort of really gotten home, and the board's really understood that Mimecast is not in place of, it's on top of, and there's value out there. So yeah, and just to mention the Grove partnership has really been amazing. We had a Google issue recently on 2 of our domains, one being a Mauritius domain supported by Grove, and one on a franchise domain. Exactly the same issue. The franchises had to contact Google directly themselves, first level support, got the runaround, probably got about 8 different answers in the space of a week. Grove got the initial same response, but persevered, and thanks to their relationships, actually got us to the exact resolution. So thanks to Grove, we were able to implement the fix and then pass that value onto our franchise. So just again, from that partnership and that long-term value add, even though implementing Google Workspaces, it's easy. So when it goes wrong.